Hello, VC. Welcome to another edition of Pete's CD and LP World. Today, I wanted to give it another spin, kind of a double shot for Yes, Union, and their follow-up Talk. And before that, I just wanted to go on a little rant about some videos I was watching yesterday. I'm not going to mention his name, but I don't mean to rag on other people's videos, but this guy, he's doing a like top 100 albums, and he's doing about five at a time for him. And I just happened to watch like number 16 through 20 or something like that. He's doing like five at a time in each video, and like one of them was like a Kanye West album. And I'm thinking, what the hell? There's like 20 Beatle albums or Stones albums alone that are better than Kanye West. I mean, how could you possibly say? And this guy supposedly listens to all eras of music, just doesn't listen to modern music. But it seems like all of his vinyl is all 90s and 2000s bands. I mean, this guy's got like 30,000 subscribers, so he probably does this full time as his occupation, maybe. But I just can't believe. And everybody's commenting on his albums, like, "Oh, this is such a great album," and this and that. It's like you have all this vinyl. He has like a wall full of vinyl, but like most of the albums were at the time probably recorded digitally. So I don't know. It just seemed crazy to me. I don't mean to rag on somebody else's videos or somebody else's taste of what they like, but it's just I don't know. Anyway, let's get back to where we're going today. So yes, 1991, they get back together as sort of a super lineup with John Anderson, Chris Squire, Trevor Rabin, Tony Kaye, Alan White, and then bring back some of the classic members. Rick Wakeman and Bill Buford on drums. So they did an awesome tour. Actually, the only time I saw Yes was when this concert, and they played in the round, and it was great. There were some songs where they played together. Other songs they just did as individual lineups. Pretty much Alan White was the drummer the whole time. Bill Buford was just playing like this set of electronic drums and various percussion. He wasn't really the drummer even on some of his songs. So at the same time they released this album, which was sort of this big reunion between all the classic members. But in reality, this album is split into sort of two camps. You have the Anderson, Wakeman, Bruford, Howe lineup with Tony Levin on bass, who was the one who played on that Anderson, Wakeman, Bruford, Howe album. And then you have the 90125 lineup with Trevor Rabin and Tony Kaye. Tony Kaye was actually the original keyboard player. He left after the Yes album, and he came back for 90125. But so this album is basically split up between those two camps. Most of the songs on this album are the Anderson, Wakeman, Buford, Howe lineup, and Chris Squire does a little bit of work on them too. So I think Chris Squire is the only one, as far as my ears can tell, or by the confusing booklet, that does work on both sets of tracks. The first four songs, I Would Have Waited Forever, Shock to the System, Masquerade, Lift Me Up, are all pretty good songs. Lift Me Up was the single from the album. It's the 90125 lineup with Trevor Rabin. The video they did had all the members of the lineup in the video. Main problem with this album is way too long. There's 14 songs on it. Most of them, like I said, were from the Anderson, Wakeman, Bruford, Howe lineup. And there's not really a throwback to that sound at all. In fact, one of the songs, Dangerous, is even an attempt to sound like sort of Big Generator 90125 sound. I would have eliminated like four songs right in the middle here. Miracle of Life, Silent Talking, The More We Live, and Angkor Wat, maybe even Dangerous. This album should have been 10 songs, but this was the era, of course, where bands were just filling CDs to the max with music. That being said, like I said, there's some really good songs on here. This is probably the most hated album in the Yes catalog, not counting the newer ones they've done with their new singer. I think they've done 2 or 3 albums with him. I haven't heard any of those, but Rick Wakeman even referred to this album as Onion because it either made him cry or it just smelled so bad. Going back on it, I probably hadn't listened to this album in at least 25 years until about a month ago, and then I listened to it this morning again. Like I said, if you eliminate about 5 songs, this album is probably an enjoyable album. It just sounds more in the vein of the 90125 lineup. There's no sort of classic, besides the instrumental Masquerade, which is an acoustic solo from Steve Howe. There's not much else as far as a throwback to the classic era. You know, I'm assuming Bill Buford plays drums on those tracks, but it's like all electronic. So next up, I'm going to move on to their next album, which was called Talk. And this came out in 94. So a couple years later, they sort of just settled back down into the 90125 lineup of John Anderson, Trevor Rabin, Chris Squire, Tony Kaye, and Alan White. So this is their 3rd studio album they did. 90125, Big Generator, and then this. So this album I probably have not listened to in maybe 20 plus years. At least I probably got it a couple years after it came out. I don't even remember. I just remember the one song, Walls, got played on WNEW in New York a couple times. I can't believe. Remember when radio stations actually used to play new songs from classic bands? So anyway, I was pleasantly surprised of how good this album is. I probably listened to this a couple times back in the 90s, and it just didn't interest me that much at the time. This is definitely an album you have to listen to grab hold of. So the songs don't grab you right away. There aren't really those pop or rock hooks like there were on 90125 and Big Generator. Even the one song, Walls, doesn't grab you right away. So the first 2 songs, The Calling, I Am Waiting, are really great songs. Real Love is pretty good. The next song, State of Play, is just okay. Walls is a great song. Where Will You Be is a sort of almost like John Anderson type solo song, sort of meditative. Doesn't really fit in with the rest of the album per se. And then the album ends with a 15-minute suite called Endless Dream. Now this song, the first portion of it is called Silent Spring, which is an instrumental. If you had told me this was Dream Theater, I probably would have believed you. That's how heavy it is. It's probably the heaviest thing Yes has ever done. And it goes into the song Talk and ends with a short sort of vocal song called Endless Dream. That song to me reminds me of something that would be definitely back in the old days of Yes. Probably the only thing this lineup did, which is considered sort of classic Yes. Overall, the sound of this album is awesome. I would say Alan White plays unbelievably on here. I think Alan White's one of the most underrated drummers out there. And I know Bill Buford played on all of their classic stuff through Fragile. Bill Buford, Wakeman, Alan White came on for that tour, so he's on Yes songs forward, all the albums. Unfortunately, I think he's not in great health right now, and on tour, I think he comes out for a couple songs, but now they have another drummer, actually. So the current lineup of Yes, besides Steve Howe, I don't think there's anybody. There's Billy Sherwood, who've played here and there with Yes. But yeah, I can't believe how good this album is. Like I said, it's an album that you have to listen to several times to grab onto. The songs just don't grab you. You have to wait for the payoff. You have to. There's a slow build up to a lot of the songs too. Another thing is too, I would say, besides the ending 15-minute song, most of the other songs run about 7 minutes long, which in most of them are about 1.5 to 2 minutes too long, I think. They just drag on for another chorus and another reprieve, just too long. That would be my main complaint about this album. Again, this was made in the 90s, so this was back when bands were trying to fill the CDs with space. If they had eliminated State of Play and Where Will You Be, you're still talking about probably a 45-minute album here, which would have been perfect. This album would have been awesome. But those two songs drag it down a little bit. If you like late 80s, early 90s Rush, there's a lot of that sound on here. Trevor Rabin on this album really explores a lot more guitar tones. I think on 90125, even Big Generator, he sort of had his distorted sound and he had his clean sound. Here he's doing all sorts of stuff, even some pedal steel guitar, which is also sort of a throwback to the classic Yes lineup. So I definitely highly recommend this album. I'm not sure how Yes fans rank this. I'm not sure. Obviously, it'd be in the lower echelon of Yes music. If you're asking me how to rate this album out of 5 stars, if you had asked me a couple years ago, I probably would have said, I don't know, it was just okay, maybe a 2-star album. Now I'm going to rank this about 3.5 stars. If you had taken away those 2 songs I had mentioned, I'd probably rank it about a 4-star album out of 5. So I definitely highly recommend this. Going back to this one, I'd probably say this is about 2.5 stars. It could probably be bumped up to 3 if they got rid of like 4 songs like I had mentioned in the middle here. Another thing about this album that's crazy is there's a bunch of outside musicians that play on it. You would have thought with all these Yes musicians, 8 guys here we're talking about, that would have been enough. But like I said, Tony Levin plays bass on a lot of the Anderson, Wakeman, Bruford Howe songs, and there's Billy Shearwood and some other guy that plays a little bit of guitar on here. So in many ways, this album is not really a complete lineup album from either lineup. It's just out there. But I love the cover of this. It's another Roger Dean classic cover right there. So I would probably give this 2.5 stars. Like I said, if you eliminate some of those other songs, you can make it to a 3 album. It's definitely not as bad as I remember it being. I remember not really liking hardly any songs on here except the 2 or 3 that were played live from this. So anyway, let me know what you think of these albums or Yes in general. And if you like these videos, please subscribe. And thanks for watching.